Hello and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotelo, Esquire, and noted wrestling author and pundit for the wrestling community, and that is Evan Ginsberg. So, what have we got today? We just survived. Okay, WrestleMania is over, and boy, are my arms tired. That's I guess we just got back from WrestleMania, and boy, are my arms tired. So for all of those who are uninitiated, WrestleMania was just yesterday and Saturday, and you just can't get too much of a good thing, can you, Evan? When it's an unlimited amount of wrestling, you just never get sick and tired of watching it, do you?
I'm emotionally and physically drained, having watched two 4-hour WWE shows back to back. And my take on it is it should really be called money grab mania or money mark mania, because I saw post after post. They had guys in $400 seats, a stadium away from the ring where they couldn't see the ring, and some of them couldn't even see the screens, and they were watching it on their cell phones. And I've come to this conclusion. We know geniuses who have stated publicly, quote, WWE is my religion. And I think it's become almost a religious pilgrimage as formal religion wanes in America. And I'm not even making a statement about religion per se, but when people travel thousands of miles and spend $400 in nosebleed seats down to $10,000 ringside, and a portion of that crowd can't even see the quote unquote action, and much of it was mediocre. I think it's almost like a religious fervor, and I think it's utterly insane. And another point that I sometimes forget to get in there is if you have 50 or 60 or 70,000, and you never know because WWE tends to exaggerate allegedly their attendance, they can't all be rich. They can't all be rich. They said the average single person, not a couple, single person would spend between $3,000 and $4,000 over the weekend, to go to this. And they can't all have it. Somebody's maxing out credit cards and going to get in trouble. I stand by that.
Now, have you been to Vegas?
Yes.
Okay. Vegas is, of course, the city of excess. And in having an event like that in Vegas, I noticed something that I thought was pretty fascinating. Okay. For the really big matches, the place was full. But when the worst matches were out there, like the Americano match, oh my God, what a terrible match that was. I mean, why that even was in WrestleMania, and they could have easily cut out most of the fluff matches and just had it be a one night thing, instead of two nights. But you could tell what was going on is that with the big matches, people showed up and packed the place, and then they went out of the arena to gamble or get food that wasn't, $1,000 a hot dog. During the worst matches, and then they would come back for the bigger matches again. And so I saw a lot of empty seats for, the War Machine against a New Day, for example. Okay. Everyone was there for the Jey Uso match versus Gunther. Okay. And then, the War Machine match was followed. And that match had lots of empty seats there. And it really didn't build back up till like the next big match that they had. I guess the Charlotte Flair match maybe like had people really come back in and fill up all the seats. So I think there are people, not only are they paying $400 a seat or whatever, but they're only going to 5 or 6 matches overall. They're paying that kind of money, but they're not even going to every match. They're leaving because it's one thing when like you go to the Cow Palace to see a bunch of matches, okay? You're not, trust me, you haven't been to the Cow Palace in San Francisco, have you?
Oh,
You don't leave the arena for anything except to get to your car and get out of there. It's like definitely San Francisco's worst neighborhood was until everything got so expensive that even a rundown shack is a $2 million investment. But with Vegas, there's that temptation that if there's something in front of you that you're not really interested in, well, just go gamble for a little while and come back, and or go to the sports book and throw some money around there, or go to one of the many bars and get really pounded and then come back into the arena. Unless there was no in and out, and I doubt there was. It looked like there were lots of, and even then, the casino had lots of other distractions for you to go to, so that Vegas kind of lends to people not even buying in completely to the event. They're just there for select matches. And the rest were really like basically, I mean, almost bought for for how big the arena was. It was like a bomb scare for some of the lesser matches.
hmm.
And so I don't know if it's such a great idea. I mean, it's great, obviously, if you're the WWE, but if you're someone attending, I'm not sure how great it is to go see a major event like that in Vegas. What's your take?
Well, I wouldn't go see anything if I couldn't see it. Even at AEW, I was seated in a press section where part of the ring was, you know, blocked by all the camera stuff and equipment. So I watched the entire show, and it is a TV taping technically.
On the
I
big
watched,
screen.
yeah, I watched the entire show on a screen, and then rather than stay for the next TV taping, I left because I'm like, I could watch this on TV. I'm not really experiencing it in a ring the way I want to experience it. So I think it's outrageous that it's become more about it's more about being part of a spectacle than really enjoying a wrestling show. And WWE actually avoids the word wrestling. It's sports entertainment, sports alleged entertainment, whatever the case may be. So I watched both nights, and I watch their pay-per-views. I do not watch their TV. I won't squander 3 hours on a Raw, but I watched their pay-per-views, premium live events, whatever you prefer to call them. And night one, I said to people, had I seen that on a WWE house show without all the bells and whistles and elaborate entrances and costumes and music and celebrities and such, just on the wrestling alone, I would have paid up to $40. I would have paid up to
I mean, the
$40.
Uso Gunther match was great up until the finish. Those guys really put it out there.
I wouldn't say it was great. It was good. It was very good. But the finish where Gunther just immediately quit, that didn't even ring true. It just left you with a bad taste in your mouth.
it was a really odd way to like for them not even to work the sleeper hold at all. It just they just grabbed him off the ropes and that finished it. And I think that first of all, I think that's not that we get too much into the booking or the politics of the WWE or the storylines of the WWE, but I think this is where you're gonna see kind of the Rusev de-pushing of Rusev style de-pushing of Gunther here. I think they're ready to now cycle him back into sort of the WWE flotsam jetsam mid carders.
I
You
hope
know,
not, because he's my favorite wrestler on their roster because he's a pure wrestler. He reminds me of Killer Kowalski. He just keeps coming at you, pounding on you, and pure wrestler. And he's really too good to be part of that circus. Triple H said that Jey Uso sells a lot of gimmicks and gets a great crowd reaction, and that's what matters to them. And the fact that Gunther is a bigger, stronger, far superior wrestler. And if you looked at the two of them, you would never give Jey Uso a shot in hell if it were a legitimate shoot. It's just, it doesn't even ring credible that Jey Uso beat him, but you know why? Because what matters to WWE is hawking T-shirts, not who's
And
the.
image. I mean, Gunther doesn't strike you as this chiseled Ultimate Warrior, tatted up, street type, individual. He's really the classic old school, hardcore wrestler that doesn't impress you with his body. He's like a Dr. Death Steve Williams. That's kind
But
of.
Dr. Death was a big, muscular guy, more so
But he
than.
wasn't chiseled. He wasn't like, this total Adonis type guy.
Right, right.
Wasn't an obvious bodybuilder. He had a wrestler's body. There used to be a thing like a wrestler's body, like Greg the Hammer Valentine, another good example of that. I mean, there was a time where the side of beef wrestler, that's what I used to call it. It's basically like getting in the ring with just a big side of cow meat that just would just pummel you you know, that sort of thing, other than the War Machine, and Gunther, you really don't see that in wrestling. And Kevin Owens probably is probably the modern version of the side of beef wrestler, where it's not how chiseled you are, it's the fact that you know a lot about wrestling, you're strong enough, and you've got the pain tolerance to be able to put up with, the punishment of being a wrestler. And so much of that's lost in what you see today in wrestling, especially in the WWE, where that sort of, chiseled look was something that Vince McMahon couldn't get enough of. And, he pushed the guys that were, real bodybuilding types, but he pushed down the guys that were, solid wrestler types, or put them in crazy gimmicks, or tried to embarrass them, like a Dusty Rhodes, making him wear polka dots, and Terry Funk really didn't get, or he became Chainsaw Charlie. That was a pretty ridiculous gimmick, and you could tell like Vince's favorites, gravitated towards the top and got better gigs, and the ones he didn't like wound up like Akeem, the African Dream, and so forth. So, you know, and that's still there, and you can sort of see it. I think that's what's going to happen to Gunther. He's just going to fall out of that favor of the WWE's polished wrestler image, and they're going to, push, Jey Uso, as you pointed out, who sells a lot of merchandise, and I mean, is a fair wrestler in his own end, but that's, I think, not why he's champion right now.
I've yet to see Jey Uso in a great or classic singles match. I mean, the Usos together were quite good, but they weren't the Midnight Express or Rock and Roll Express or Road Warriors. They.
Or even the Briscoes.
Yeah. So he could yeet from here to tomorrow and hawk his T-shirts
But that's the thing, yeah. The yeet is so over, and Gunther doesn't have a yeet. He doesn't yeet. He just goes in there and beats people up, and that's not in favor.
He'd be perfect in AEW because Claudio and Shelton Benjamin and all these guys that WWE kept mid-card or whatnot, they'll be pushed there because the wrestling matters more over there. And I don't want to make it sound all negative. The three-way women's match that opened night 2 was excellent.
I gotta watch that. I'm sorry.
Match of the weekend. And I just find it very odd when WWE continually has the best match on first. It just has a very weird flow to a show when the next match is inevitably a letdown, even if it's name wrestlers. And, the end of the show with Cena and Cody was
Cody.
very disappointing and a screw job finish. And it's a weird flow when the best match is 4 hours earlier in the night, by far the best match, and everybody said it. Nothing touched that. And I'll go an extra yard with all of this. AEW's TV show last week with Will Ospreay and Takeshita, that TV show was better than either night of WrestleMania. Just a TV show that you turn on for free was better than a $10,000 WrestleMania. And the fanboy soldiers and their imaginary WWE versus AEW war will hate hearing that, but nothing on either night of WrestleMania touched Ospreay and Takeshita. It wasn't even close. So
Yet lots of people are going out, saying that, well, Osprey is overrated. They're saying,
they
that
don't watch him.
yes,
They don't watch him. They all those guys are spot monkeys. They used to say the same thing about Ring of Honor. That they watched one episode 3 years earlier, and somehow they're experts. And they don't. Here's the irony of it all. They would do all the AEW wrestlers are spot monkeys, but the second Penta jumps to WWE, he's everything good, good and wonderful, and they're in love with the guy. I mean, it's such hypocrites. It's ridiculous.
Well, where do you think Cody Rhodes is going to go from the results?
He's going to go
here?
right back to the championship. Cena, it's a money grab. He's well past his prime. This guy, like The Rock, he should start turning down some gigs. He makes horrible movies. He's got a horrible TV show. I shouldn't say they're all horrible, but he's made plenty of horrible movies. He's got a real work ethic. He's going to take every dollar that comes his way, including voiceover work. Save some voiceover work for the starving actors. But
true, yeah, he is the voice of so many things on TV.
So the point being, he's well past his prime, and the match was a real letdown yesterday. And he's gonna.
Yeah, that was what the entire WrestleMania was centered around.
Basically, he's getting millions and millions of dollars for 36 appearances, and most of the appearances will just be him talking. And it's a good gig for him. I mean, he's going to make a fortune, and the end of the year or whatnot, he's going to leave, or in wrestling you end up not leaving because eventually they all come back one way or the other. But basically, that's it. He's on his final tour or whatnot, and I'm sure they gave him a fortune of money to the point where he could turn down a crappy movie or two. And let me say a few things about Cena, because I saw him headline 3 Garden cards, the sporadic times I've gone over the years since Vince and Triple H went full circus with it. I saw him headline the Garden against Dolph Ziggler in a very vanilla cage match, no blood. I didn't even know why they were feuding, why they were in a cage. It was forgettable. But I saw Cena against Roman Reigns headline the Garden, and it was great. And I saw Cena against Bray Wyatt headline the Garden, and it was great. So the Cena can't work deal is just not true. He does a lot of the same moves. He's a real part of the WWE same 5 moves syndrome. But the guy can wrestle and he works hard. And 2 of the 3 times I saw him headline, there were great matches. And he's very charitable with the Make-A-Wish kids. And, I mean, there's some real pluses with the guy.
Yeah, now I can say this. I remember Cena when he was the prototype, because he worked All Pro Wrestling back in 2000 and 2001. We had an invasion angle where XPW, which was run by Rick Bassman, who's now a big cheese over at MMA, doing the MMA stuff. But he had his own wrestling fed called XPW, and he and Roland Alexander had a real love-hate relationship where they both of them wanted credit for like the wrestlers that they were bringing into the WWE. At the time, it was the prototype for John Cena for XPW, and Roland had Dilip Singh, aka the Great Khali. So they were both sort of competing to see which one of them was going to create the bigger star, which I guess we know what the end result was in that. But I had a chance to meet Cena in person several times, and he was very nice. He wasn't a real big like star at that time. I mean, he was a big star of XPW, but you know, he wasn't a household name like he is now. And he didn't big time anybody. I thought all the XPW talent that we worked with, which included Samoa Joe, Frankie Kazarian, Stevie Richards, Looney Lane, and of course the Prototype. They were all really nice guys, and we got along really well with them. We had dinner over at the Applebee's in Hayward, and it was a good time. So I'm glad to see him accomplish what he's accomplished right now. But yeah, I do think that there might be a little bit of overkill when he does so many things he's doing right now, and people may be by the time he's done with the WWE. I find it very interesting to see the WWE pouring so much of their focus of this year, including taking away the title from Cody, who worked so hard to get it, just to push Cena for maybe another 4 or 5 months. I just thought
Well,
that was interesting.
WWE basically their marks for anything that transcends wrestling, whether it's a big time rapper or Cena is a pretty big time actor at this point. I'm sure they would bring back Batista in some capacity if they could, even though he's lost a lot of weight and muscle at this point and he's pushing 60. But you know that they feel that it's all about social media and reaching a larger audience and reaching a new audience and conquering the world. They just bought AAA, and God forbid they buy New Japan at some point. You know, look what they did to poor Nakamura. He went from top 5 in the world to another warm body on a card. You know, and what they've done to the luchadors for the most part, with the exception of Ray and one or two others, basically they neutered a boatload of great luchadors, including Mystico, who, you know, was one of the biggest stars in Mexico. They totally squandered him. I don't have high hopes for what. I mean, look what they're doing with Chad Gable, you know, with this ridiculous gimmick. It's so I don't have high hopes.
That match, I think, at least in night one, I didn't get to see all of night two, but that to me was so far the low point of WrestleMania.
It was cartoonish, but I mean, it wasn't a bad match. Hold
It
for
was just
hold.
meaningless and had no pop.
Meaningless, yes.
Meaningless, and there was just zero pop in the audience. You could tell everybody in the arena left, you know, to go do something else, and it was just a why have it match. I mean, it was a match that easily you could see on SmackDown or Raw.
I stand by what I said before. If for example, I'm 20 minutes from Madison Square Garden, if that exact card, just the wrestling, that exact card was at the Garden, and I went on StubHub and got a ticket for 35 or 40 bucks last second, I would have said, okay, it was an okay card. I enjoyed some of the matches. The main event was good. The Charlotte Flair Stratton match wasn't flawless, but it was a good match. I've seen Flair in better matches, but it was a quality match. And I would have walked out saying, oh, that was a perfectly pleasant evening. But to spend 3, 4, 5 figures for that card, people spending $10,000, nothing warranted that. You know, the second night was a slightly better card, but it was ass backward. It started strong and died at the end. It was the exact polar opposite. So, you know, Seth Rollins comes out with a flamethrower. that guy could have shot flames out of his ass for 10 grand. I wouldn't have been impressed. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And you get to a point where when you're at the seventh hour of watching wrestling in 2 days, A, you've seen everything that you can see already. B, you're just exhausted from like the noise, from the flash,
The heat. It's Arizona,
the heat,
not
the
Nevada, I should say, Nevada.
I'm sure there's plenty of alcohol going around, that you've just been spending money hand over foot, and that you've been, you not to mention fly, most people fly out to Vegas for
And
that.
they go to other shows. They had NXT. They had all the indies. They had the Hall of Fame. They had the Undertaker money grab comedy show, etc. So on. I mean, people were running 24/7. And I saw people today. I'm exhausted. I'm selling my Raw ticket in Nevada. In Vegas. I mean, it becomes overkill after a while. It's sensory overload, and
Yeah, and then the WWE goes back to doing their Raw show tonight, and they
that's what I'm
do.
saying. People were
uh,
selling their ticket because they had enough over the weekend,
and you got
and
to do it Thursday. You got to do another show on Thursday, and they got to get ready for another pay-per-view. That's going to happen in another month or so.
we
And
have we have SummerSlam coming to New Jersey, and I would, I'm in New York. I would go not necessarily to SummerSlam, but to some of the big indie events or conventions or whatnot. I mean, I appreciate that side of it, but and it gives an opportunity for some of the indies to get seen. We had billboards in Vegas for 350 days. We hope that gets people to watch it, and some people that haven't seen it. But it's, I mean, wrestling's in a boom cycle. You could have gone to wrestling basically 24/7 all weekend in Vegas and seen whatever you wanted to see.
I know
But
I never thought wrestling would be like that, where you would just have. I mean, did you ever think that? I mean, especially after like the first WrestleMania, it would eventually evolve to this 2 day like nonstop wrestling.
almost a week. It's almost a week. The stuff
Yeah,
started up Wednesday or Thursday.
yeah. Did you ever think that that's where wrestling would be, and it would just become like its own, like literally its own world? It would be, a bigger event than the Super Bowl in its own, realm. The
I like I said at the beginning of the show, I think it's almost a religious fervor. It's not necessarily healthy. I think people are going to be financially hurt at some point. I think many of these people, they're not going to follow it for 50 years like I have. They're going to burn out on it at some point when they go, how many times could I be disappointed? How many times am I going to sit so far away I can't even see the show? How many times are they going to jack up the prices obscenely? I think at some point it'll peak. These We've had boom cycles before, the Hulkamania era, you know, it peaks and then it plummets. You're not going to be able to hit everybody up for 10 grand for a ticket. At some point, they're going to go, that Cena match sucked. I don't want to see a rematch with him and Cody or whatnot.
but that's exactly what they're headed towards, and that they want to. What the WWE loves to do is to take an idea that they know people will buy and just continue to resell it, repackage it, and
Well, they're
resell
bringing
it.
back Cena and Orton, except they're 100 years old between them now.
I was shocked the Undertaker didn't show up somehow in the ring. You know, give him another semi-main event. Work him into the main event. You
Yeah,
know,
let's talk about The Undertaker for a minute. The Undertaker at one of his comedy shows, they were selling toast with The Undertaker, $2,873.
how much was
So,
butter?
yeah, another greed monger.
How
They'll
much was a
blame it
pat of
they'll
butter?
blame it on the agent or whatnot, but I'm sure he plenty enjoyed the cash coming in, and the nepotism and cronyism. Ivan Koloff, Ivan Koloff got a 90-second Hall of Fame induction, and Triple H got a 90-minute Hall of Fame induction. That's how absurd this is. Ivan Koloff would easily be on my Mount Rushmore of great foreign heels, and Ivan Koloff would be in my top 10. Triple H wouldn't break my top 50, and I'm going to wrestling for 50 years. And
well, but you got to cover the Hunter Hearst Helmsley years. I mean, that in itself is a good 45 minutes to talk about when he was Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And then you have the other side when he was with DX. So that in itself, I mean, the transition from being Hunter Hearst Helmsley to Triple H is something that, easily should take up 80 minutes worth of discussion. So
they gave the guy a statue, okay? Like he's Martin Luther King or Abraham Lincoln. I mean, it's absurd.
I mean, let's say we are happy that Ivan Koloff made it to the Hall of Fame. That is well overdue, and then a bunch of other guys that hadn't been in there, like Dory Sr., getting into the Hall of Fame. Who else? Kamala did. So they some guys that really did need to get in the Hall of Fame before the Bellas, but still, the fact that the Bellas went in and Beth Phoenix went in before, Ivan Koloff, that's something we can't change.
And they were on the main show, and he was just like an afterthought with a video package. We'd like to introduce Ivan Koloff's family. They don't even know their names, okay? And Dory Funk Jr. sitting in the audience. They're putting in his dad. Why not let this guy talk for a minute or two? And Triple H could have been on for 88 minutes instead of 9.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Dory Funk Jr. could tell us more in 5 minutes than Hunter Hearst could tell us in 5 days on the mic.
And this was his second induction. And Ivan Koloff, 54 years since he beat Bruno at the Garden. He headlined Madison Square Garden 13 times. That's just Madison Square Garden. He headlined all throughout the circuit, all throughout the world, challenged for the AWA belt, the NWA belt, any belt there was. Ivan Koloff was in the main event, one of the all-time great heels.
And I can guarantee you this, that is the last time the WWE is going to mention Ivan Koloff. You will never hear his name mentioned again. They'll say, we did it, we put him in the Hall of Fame, now you guys all shut up because we did what you wanted us to, and now he is never to be mentioned again. And by the way, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, let's give you another 45-minute speech. Come on out here and speak for another.
Unless there's a way for them to make money off of Bruno, and then they'll talk about Ivan Koloff.
Even then, they'll just kind of like say, "Oh yeah, there's Ivan Koloff." They're not going to give him any more spotlight than he just got. As you said, unless there's Ivan Koloff the fifth comes in and headlines. If they have his great grandson somehow get in the ring, that's probably the only way.
I wrote a nice piece on Ivan for Pro Wrestling Stories, and I was also quoted in a piece on Ivan in the Pro Wrestling Post, and it's nice that he's getting ink. He's getting, it helps him to get his due anyway, but it's too little, too late.
I agree with that. It is, and doing the right thing is good, but the fact that we literally had to put them in a submission hold, though those of us, who are on the outside looking into the WWE, for the WWE to do the right thing, but only to do the right thing after people have protested to you for years and years and years and years and years, doesn't come off all as so genuine as it would have if they had done it when they first set up the Hall of Fame. I mean, Ivan Koloff could have easily been an original inductee, or like in the first 2 or 3 classes.
Yeah,
that you could have gotten to him then. and that he stands behind, Drew Carey and Kid Rock. You know, those guys have been in the Hall of Fame for over a decade more than, what you've seen from, before Ivan Koloff gets mentioned or that Dory Funk Sr. gets mentioned is, it's that sort of wait into the back of the line. If you're one of the classics and you help build what we know as wrestling today, you have to wait behind people who are bigger commercial successes in modern wrestling before you get recognized for your contributions. That's what rubs me the wrong way, and I think it rubs you the wrong way, and I think for a number of wrestling traditionalists, it rubs us the wrong way, but who cares about us anymore? That's why I have this podcast.
Well, WWE is all about nepotism and cronyism, and Triple H's buddies will all get their second rings while they're here and on the main show, and the adoration. And Ivan's dead for a long time, and he wasn't there to enjoy it. At least, the family publicly said they were grateful. I mean, you like to see somebody you love acknowledged, and there's pluses to it, but to me it was treated like an afterthought. And
Well, it's just like all the great classic footage the WWE has after buying up all those other feds. The WWE just sits on all that stuff and doesn't make, old AWA matches really easy to watch and make, old WCW matches. And even I'd love to see old Tri-WF matches. The only time I ever get to see the Tri-WF is when I go onto YouTube and somebody has uploaded something from their own personal video collection. I'd like to see, on, Peacock, which I do subscribe to, I would like actually to see, like, be able to really go into lots of old classic matches that the WWE has at their disposal, and they just don't do it. They just hold on to it for whatever reason and sit on it.
they think
They don't want to
somebody told me they feel the old school fans or the people that appreciate 70s and 80s wrestling are in the minority, and they don't feel it's as marketable, and everything with them is about money and clicks and views. It's not about honoring somebody. I would watch a 2-hour Ivan Koloff best of or documentary before I'd watch another documentary on one of their quote unquote superstars.
How about another 90 minutes for Triple H?
Look, he was not a bad wrestler by any means, but I'm sure
Triple H has had his share of the spotlight. Let's say nobody has ever said I didn't get to see when Triple H eventually dies. When Paul Levesque eventually gets old enough and dies. The one thing I don't think anyone is going to say about him is, well, we really didn't get to see a lot of him while he was alive. That he didn't get a lot of the spotlight.
Yeah.
That he just really opened up the door for everybody else, and he himself never hogged the spotlight or took credit for anything. No, I don't think that's going to be said about him.
And the whole thing where he's on the fanboy good list with the Booker of the Year. 90% of what Vince churned out, was instantly forgettable, vanilla pablum content. The fact that, let's say, 80% of what Triple H turns out is crap doesn't make him a genius. The fact that he's somewhat better than Vince, I mean, add up the matches from WrestleMania weekend. 14, 15 matches, maybe 3 or 4 were really.
I was going to say four.
Yeah, were worth seeing. So, about a quarter of the matches were worth seeing, and most of it was instantly forgettable or disappointing.
And it was sandwiched between so much other promotion. That was another thing I wanted to throw in there because we hadn't really talked about how much advertising the WWE gave to itself in between all the matches. is one reason why it went 4 hours. You cut out all the like pablum of the WWE patting itself on its own back and trying to sell you everything. I just, I know that Vince wants, and Vince taught Triple H how to sell everything in the friggin' world. I just was so tired by the time even after night one. It's the one reason why I couldn't watch both nights in one day today is that there's just so much advertising that's going in there for the WWE. It makes your eyes cross, and by the time the next match finally gets underway, I was half asleep from like watching ads.
Oh, I was numb after the first half of night one, but the Flair match in the main event salvaged it, which is pretty much the pattern with a lot of the WWE shows. You have your 2 or 3 quality matches on the big shows, and most of it is just mediocre at best. And I tell people all the time, 1980s NWA house shows for 15, $20, Flair on top, Horsemen, Road Warriors, Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, Russians, etc., Magnum, etc., so on. Those house shows were better than any WrestleMania. I'm sorry. And, Triple
You're
H.
not sorry, and you shouldn't be sorry.
No, I'm just saying, Triple H is not any genius booker. Oh, NXT Gold, NXT Gold. All they did was cherry pick all the top Ring of Honor guys who were already stars. And all of a sudden, Triple H is a genius because he had them wrestling good matches. And they did a lot more quality wrestling at Ring of Honor than they ever did in WWE. Come on.
Well, yeah, mainly because they're thinking much more about the wrestling that's in the ring and not, how are we going to sell this? And is this guy going to, sell a bunch of Yeet t-shirts? And that, that you can almost tell who is going to go over in every WWE match by just saying who's the bigger star in the ring. Not who's the better wrestler, but who's, selling the most
Oh
merch.
yeah, and it's not much better at AEW. I could watch 20 WWE matches, and I would say 19 at a time I'm going to know who's going to win. And AEW, it's not all that different. You know exactly where they are in the hierarchy, who's the biggest star. But every once in a while, like Osprey put over Kyle Fletcher, who's a younger star and not as big a name. So I mean, in WWE, when Jey Uso won the Royal Rumble or whatnot, that was kind of a surprise. But I would say 19 out of 20 times in both promotions. Worse than WWE, but AEW is pretty predictable also. You know who the biggest star is and who's going to win. And it's not ideal. It's really not ideal.
Well, and the problem with AEW is that even when you lose, you get a title.
Yeah.
They have titles now for people who actually lose matches. So, they make one up for you as you're fighting. They have like a one of those 3D printers.
Yeah.
They're creating a belt as you're actually in the ring fighting. It's everyone gets a participation trophy. That's what they should give is part in AEW is participation trophies.
The Buddy Sotelo Brass Knucks Championship. Just make stuff up as you go along.
I'm a coal miner glove man, to be
That's right.
perfectly honest with you, because there's not a person in California who has ever seen a coal miner's glove in real life. Because where the hell would you find a coal miner's glove in California, right?
As a kid, I was watching John Tolos on the Olympic Auditorium TV show in New York, and he pulls out this glove from the 99-cent store. And I remember this 50 years later, and he goes, "I'm going to use my glove." And it's like this guy, average sized guy, not a big muscle guy, in shape, this guy could talk you into a seat. You wanted to see what he was going to do with this glove from the 99-cent store,
Yeah, well, it's better than a friendship bracelet, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
Well,
CM Punk had another good match night one. You got to give him credit. I mean,
Yeah, I was a little surprised. I mean, I don't like that's the other thing is that I thought there was a large number of three-way matches. Now the ladies made that work really well, as you said, but like I'm just not a big fan of the three ways, and it just
I'm not either, especially when like one of them just disappears. He rolls out of the ring and takes a 5 minute nap. It's not the most credible thing in the world, but the both were good. Both were really good though. The main event Monday and the opening match Tuesday with Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, and Sky. Yeah, those were good matches.
yeah, no, it's getting to the point where the women's matches are higher or better quality
But
than a lot of the men's
not Jade
matches.
Cargill. She's real green still.
Yeah, but I thought she had that impressive move where she took Monet and spun her around and dropped her from the power bomb off of her shoulders. That was a
Naomi,
good move.
yeah, Naomi, yeah.
Naomi, yeah, that was a really good move, but then that could have been just the power bomb off the shoulders should have been a great finisher, and she still had to do her finishing moves to finish her off, which I felt was unnecessary. It kind of took away from the awesomeness of the previous move that she did. But I mean, didn't undercut. I thought, which was a better match than say the Americano match. That one was a low point. And just the War Pigs, the War Machine against New Day. I thought that was just difficultly booked right after the Uso match because that one had all the high point in it and the crazy finish and I think people were just not in the mood to see another a tag match for the titles right then. That's where you probably right after the Uso match is probably where you want the Americano match, and people can come down from the bigger match to see kind of a match that's not. I mean, I'm with you that having your main event to start with encourage people to sort of blow off the rest of the show until
Yeah,
a bigger
shows you
match came.
the build to a climax where the main event was what they were there for, and it was a revenge match or some major title. Now it's like if you open with a title change, a lot of it afterwards feels anticlimactic. The vast majority of it, and especially night two, when by far the best match of the night was on first, and nothing compared to it. Nothing.
and
It's
and of course you have to compare as you're watching the rest of the show because the first match you saw and not everyone I'm sure was even in the building by the start of the first match. So because they never are, and this is Vegas, so I'm sure somebody was rolling the dice just before bell time, and you run that risk that if you have people showing up late, you're not going to have even a full crowd for the first match. You know, no, I agree with you. I think that the first match is the best place to put in young talent and giving them a chance to shine to an eager audience, as opposed to putting on your best thing first and then working your way backwards and hoping that your final match still gives you some kind of a climax, even though you've had all your title changes and all that other stuff go on before. So I don't know. I thought still that was strange booking.
and while I'm venting, Triple H publicly saying the internet wrestling community knows nothing, or I'm paraphrasing, because any and all criticism of them isn't valid because they're selling a lot of merchandise. They're selling a lot of merchandise. He always comes back to that. I call BS. I think it's perfectly valid to say that a billion-dollar corporation should help their legends and pioneers if they're in trouble, if they're ill, if they need to get buried. Instead of making a statue to your God and Savior Triple H, maybe help some of your pioneers and veterans who are trying to save their house or pay their hospital bills or get a
Or
free.
even guys who are currently wrestling in the indies right now. You know, as we said, Eric Adams needed help with his mother's death, and
Oh,
we've
it's still
had
ongoing. Eric Adams, who was trained by Johnny Rods, his mother died, and we're trying to raise money for her to be brought back to New York because he's down south now. If anybody could throw a few bucks in the GoFundMe, we'd really appreciate it.
and
And
we had
while
the
we're
other
on
wrestler who died in the ring and his
Vince
family.
Steele, Vince Steele's GoFundMe did well. He did about 17,000, which is. I mean, you're not going to bring back a dad who was the provider for 3 kids, but as far as GoFundMe's go, it did well. And CM Punk made some snide remark about, you know, giving to a GoFundMe doesn't make one a great human being. And okay, but it doesn't make you a bad one either if you're trying to help people. And
Yeah, I didn't get that statement from him at all.
People were saying he was taking a shot at Jericho allegedly. I don't know. I'm not in his head, but because Jericho's more right wing and CM Punk is more left wing, whatever the case may be. But hey, if Jericho is generous, his politics are totally opposite. Has nothing to do with it. Jericho's name is always on these GoFundmes, and much respect to him for it.
Yeah, he paid some money to Vince Steele. He paid like $1,000 to Vince Steele's family. So I mean, yeah, even I mean, politics aside, if someone does the right thing, they're doing the right thing.
And
And
while we're talking about the innumerable deaths in pro wrestling, I'd like to acknowledge radio personality and wrestling personality Rob Moore, who
yes,
passed.
please.
Rob Moore, beloved radio and wrestling personality, and
Wish we had gotten him on the show. Wish we had gotten him on the show.
another friend of mine who had nothing to do with wrestling, RF Plummer, I found out died today, and I knew
It
her.
wouldn't be wrestling and everything coast to coast without somebody dying, but you know,
Yeah,
it's
so I'd
sorry
like
to say
to,
that.
just send my respects to her as well. It was a very close friend's sister. I knew her 50 years. So, yeah, man, it's like this show in the 5+ years we've done it, we lost a lot of people along the way. But unlike the shows who only obsessively talk wrestling, sometimes you have to go beyond that and acknowledge people and
We'll always do that, you know, because to me, that's the stuff that you don't get when you just check, you know, the sheets, so to speak, and the people who just, you know, talk about ad infinitum, you know, who pinned who and what move did they do, and you
well,
know,
you get the one line, by the way, indie wrestler so and so died, and then there's the 10,000 words on a stultifying Raw or SmackDown, SmackDown. Uh,
no,
so,
I
oh, by the way, when I was venting this week about how lackluster the first night of WrestleMania was and whatnot, one guy came at me and used the term old timer, and I'd like to remind people that ageism is the last acceptable prejudice of the selectively woke. The same genius would not have said anything homophobic or racist, but ageism is somehow okay. So
yeah, until he gets old, and then you know he'll see what it feels like,
yeah,
you
and
know.
inevitably, these geniuses who say stuff like that, I'm in better shape in my old age than these doughboy wrestling fans are. There's a video of these guys walking up the escalator the wrong way at WrestleMania. It did not remind you of like Olympians in training, believe me.
That's for sure. Well, for Triple H and the WWE, all that matters, it doesn't matter how fat they are, it matters how fat their wallet is, and
Well,
that's the one way they can lose weight.
Triple H is in damn good shape, but I'm sure he's got a private gym at home. I was at the gym 7:30 in the morning today before
But
work.
but I think Triple H's idea of having them lose weight is to lose weight in their wallet. You know, to the fewer bills they have weighing them down as they leave the WWE is how they want them to lose weight. So on that note, why don't you promote your book and your column, and we'll wrap things up for this week. I'm sure you'll have plenty of vitriol next week.
This was a tough weekend with not only multiple deaths to report, but 8 hours of WrestleMania. It was a tough weekend. So, yeah, check out Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. 300 plus pages, 100 plus stories, 100 or so rare photos of wrestling legends and such. And it's available on Amazon. And yours truly, the senior editor over at ProWrestlingStories.com. Check out my piece front and center on the site on Ivan Koloff. And check out Wrestling Then and Now, a documentary we did in 2002. Killer Kowalski, Don Arnold, Nikolai Volkov, Homicide, who just retired. Homicide was great in the ring, great, underrated. And also, of course, 350 Days. Like I said, we had billboards running in Vegas, 30 or so billboards. So if you haven't seen it or you want to see it again, we have about 36 legends in that film, and I would say about half of them are gone 6 years or so after its release. So I'm happy we did what we did, because most people would not following the Wolfman around with a with a camera for an interview. We did. Larry Sharp, that I mean
Oh, the
we
Ox Baker stuff is priceless. The
yeah,
fact that
Ox
you got what you
Baker.
got with Ox Baker
Yeah.
is something that nobody else ever captured, and it steals the whole film. If people
Oh yeah,
haven't seen it,
everybody said Ox Baker stole the film. I mean, we billed Billy Graham and Bret Hart as the stars, but Ox Baker, a lot of people said stole the movie. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So and it just brings a smile to my face when I watch it over again and I see his part in the movie. It's just hilarious. Anyway, it's great to have you on this week, and looking forward to having you here next week. And we'll see everyone again. So good night, everyone.
Right.